Welcome everyone. In this video, we'll be talking with Well. Well is the creator of Wingless Angels, a mobile game created in Unreal Engine, and Well is one of my students, and he's been using some of the stuff he's learned in my shooter courses, along with his own game development skills, of course, to make this beautiful mobile game, which is actually available on the Google Play Store. So I'll have a link in the description for that. And Well posts updates on his progress in my Discord, so I'll have a link for that too. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, Well, and I had a great time playing your game last week. So I have a few questions. So first, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you for inviting me to join the talk. I worked in automotive industry before. At that time, I was impressed by rapid development in game industry. Even an individual could create games with powerful, free game engine. When I was free, I started to get familiar with several popular game engines at that moment, such as RPG Maker, Cocos, Godot, Unity, and Unreal Engine. Each of them is unique when I found proper tutorials. Making game is my favorite hobby. Now I'm a freelancer, focused on providing tutorials of Unreal or Unity for several tutorial websites in China.
That's awesome. It's always fascinating how some people get into game development from other fields in life. So I really think that's amazing. So how long have you been programming?
I started to learn coding around 2019. Since I used Unity at that time, I tried basic C# to make games such as Angry Birds, Snake. They are all simple, small games, good examples to practice basic coding concepts. Until 2020, I started to use Blueprint and try C++ in Unreal Engine, learning how to combine them together to speed up game development.
Okay, and how long have you been using Unreal Engine in particular?
I have used the Unreal Engine nearly 2 years. 4.20 is the earliest version I have used.
Wow, that's actually pretty recent. So you've sort of come a long way in those 2 years. And when did you first realize you wanted to make video games?
I want to make something unique when I play Warcraft 3, which is a computer game made by Blizzard around 2003. There is a word editor in the game folder, allowing players to edit map freely. Word editor provides sets of convenient tools for developers, similar to game engine nowadays. At that time, I made few maps and shared them on internet too.
Great stuff. And it's kind of funny how those games that let you mod levels sort of get your gears working and make you sort of realize that maybe making your own games might be a fun thing to do, right? So what is it about making games that you enjoy particularly?
I enjoy the process to make games. It's like to do some cooking. When I have an idea for a new dish, I will try to make it delicious as possible as I can. Moreover, since it is a hobby, I don't need to worry sales and schedule. Just try different recipes. Sometimes, even mistakes can bring new changes to the game. Finally, I could share game with friends and got the feedback, which makes game creation more inspiring and interesting.
Yeah, that sort of takes some of the pressure off if it's not your main job, right? So let me ask you, how much time per day do you spend learning and how much time do you spend working on your actual game?
Frankly speaking, my free time depends on orders from tutorials websites. As a freelancer, some tutorial websites ask me to provide tutorials of a specific topic for Unreal Engine or Unity. If I already get familiar with those topics, I will have more free time to develop the game. So, to some extent, learning new things is part of my job, which never gets me bored.
That's awesome. So you make your own tutorials as well. And you have a course on Udemy, don't you? And I'll post a link to that in the description as well. So was it difficult to implement mobile functionality for Wingless Angels?
Before current project, Wingless Angels, let's say WA, I have tried several prototype projects targeting on mobile platform. Thanks to experience from those projects, it is not difficult if we target to create a mobile game from the beginning. Generally, optimized textures and lighting play important roles for mobile game. In details, for instance, it is always better to use timer instead of tick event, or use few tick events to minimize resource cost for mobile game in Unreal Engine.
Right. So make some optimizations so the game can be small enough and perform well in mobile. That makes sense. So your game is on the Google Play Store. Can you talk a little bit about your experience getting it onto the Play Store? Was that difficult?
Sure. I'd like to share my experience. Generally speaking, it is comparatively easy and cheap to publish your mobile game in Google Play Store than iOS Store. There are many updated free tutorials in YouTube. There may be some changes in setup, such as for Unreal Engine 5, but they are still important with the help of official document.
That makes sense. Now, you created a tutorial video for setting up EOS, the Epic Online Services, for your game, which you're actually using to support multiplayer instead of Steam. So, do you like EOS better than Steam? And if so, why?
I think iOS or Steam having their own roles to play. If you plan to publish your PC game on Steam, it is definitely convenient to integrate Steam API with your game, supporting microtransaction, Steam account info, and Steam social interactions. When Steam starts to match a game, it usually chooses players in the same region first, which can ensure best experience in multiplayer sessions. I set up EOS since it is a set of cross-platform gaming services, supported by Unreal Engine and also free. No matter players play your game on PC or mobile, they can find each other and start a match quickly. In WA, for testing purpose, I usually use PC to create a session. Then mobile client could join that session through EOS. In this case, EOS is more convenient than Steam, since my game only targets on mobile platform.
Now, I like the art style that you're using with Wingless Angels. The art assets you were using, especially that boss lady who summons the trees, that was really cool. So, do you make these characters yourself?
There are two reasons I chose current art style. Firstly, animation art style is popular around the world. Many people, including me, like such art style regardless ages. Secondly, there is a free 3D modeling software called Void Studio. It's super easy to set up from Steam. Models you create on Void Studio are yours to use freely on many different platforms and services, such as VTuber avatar, game characters in Unity or Unreal Engine. I create several simple characters for prototype. While in WA, I bought lessons for some characters. The price is reasonable. Well, after all, I'm not an artist.
Oh, that's pretty nice. It's always great to have those resources where you can easily make custom characters, and especially if they're free, right? And unless you have like an artist in-house, right, it's kind of hard to collect lots of assets that all mesh together well with the style. So it's great to know those resources. So, what is your long-term goal for Wingless Angels?
My long-term goal is to complete this small game, which may sound normal, but actually already ambitious. Most games I know are not completed due to various reasons. In addition, the code structure decides how far the game can go. It's the first time I try to make a single-player game with multiplayer content without a central data server. So everything is also new to me. So far, I get some feedback after early access version published on Google Play. I will try to update it regularly since I have some idea to implement.
Now, you have some roguelike procedural generation in your game, and I really like that. Can you talk about that a little bit? Where did you learn about procedural generation?
In terms of roguelike dungeon generation, I firstly refer to official examples in Unreal Engine. Though that content was created 7 years ago, it is good to know how to realize it in Unreal Engine. Then I investigated examples from Marketplace and free tutorials. I remembered you also made tutorials about this topic in YouTube channel. Finally, I chose Dungeon Architecture plugin. It is comparatively easy to use and provides sets of solutions for multiplayer cases, even on mobile. Its source code is also easy to modify to meet my own needs.
I've always been a fan of procedural generation. I'm sort of partial to random dungeon generators and things. I like the replayability. Why do you like procedural generation? Is this something you think all game developers should know how to implement, at least to some degree?
Procedural generation can provide unique experience for players whenever they play. In Diablo 2, endless variations in dungeons, loots, and enemies are very impressive to me. It can be achieved by limited art resource and good game design, so I always try to provide a similar experience in my games. I made a similar prototype last year based on concept of Dark Soul with procedure generated dungeon. Here is a video link. Procedural generation is good to know for all game developers, a very good practice to utilize algorithm to build the 3D or 2D game world.
Now, in Wingless Angels, you have some pretty unique enemies. What was your main inspiration for these enemies?
I like fairy tale style characters and have several art assets. Current monsters pack fit forest dungeon theme. In fact, this pack is both popular in Unity and Unreal Engine.
Very nice. Now, you have some really great boss fights going on in WA. Can you talk about what you were thinking when you designed those boss fights?
First, unique. Boss is different from mobs in appearance and skills. It's better to prepare a set of arts only for boss if possible, including sound, cutscene, area, particle effect, etc. Second, mechanism. It depends on what experience you want player to go through. I'd like player to keep moving while shooting the boss. Evading attacking from boss hears special sound or see special movement of boss. So players need to be focused if they want to defeat boss. Moreover, when boss health is lower, she will summon 2 mobs every 60 seconds, which requires player to finish boss quickly. If player cannot achieve it, which means player doesn't have powerful weapon or just out of ammo, That's why I implement escape button in the game. If players think ammo will run out before starting boss fight, they can escape the dungeon with partial rewards. Power up the weapon for next try. If not, all loots will be lost when players are defeated in the battle.
So your Udemy course is on actually implementing boss fights, right? So tell us a little bit about that course, and if we take it, what will we learn?
Thanks for mentioning it. That course is focused on AI framework I made with full blueprint for 2 combat AI. One is a typical melee combat humanoid mob. Another one is a dragon, spreading fire and speed fireball from sky. You will learn how to use blueprint to make AI turn in place with animation, make attack decision dynamically, strive randomly, reacting to heat, entering into temporary stun state, fly state, or death state.
Are boss fights more challenging than regular enemies? And if so, why?
In most cases, I think so. Most players expect neither better rewards or greater achievement through challenges, or they may feel bored or underestimated. However, there are cases that mobs, or in other words, regular enemies, are more challenging than boss due to level design or special gameplay mechanism. For example, in Dark Souls series, some mobs are usually stronger than some bosses.
So let's talk a little bit about game design then. So when should we put a boss fight in our game? Should we have lots of boss fights or just a few?
I think the answers mainly are up to game design. Usually, boss fight is one of climax in the game, waiting at the end of a level for player to explore. However, there are few games only having boss fights without regular enemies, such as Shadow of the Colossus. Each boss represents a gameplay mechanism, big challenge for players. We know boss fight is just one factor in level design. It depends whether a few or more boss fights contributing to core of gameplay. In other words, whether more boss fights can make game more interesting to play or not.
So what are some games that have inspired you when you make your games? Like, do you play video games to get inspiration?
When I try to make prototype games, Warcraft series, Diablo 2, classic Heroes of Might and Magic, and Dark Souls series inspired me a lot. Yeah, I play video games for some references sometimes. Game itself changed a lot nowadays, since players have less time and mobile games play important roles. As long as game sharing happiness, inspiration will never stop.
Right. So what is your thought process when you decide to make a particular level?
I believe level design serves gameplay and the background story. It should contribute to adding content to theme of the game and feasible to implement in gameplay. In WA, it is a fairy tale style game, and forest theme is a good start for procedural generation test. So I choose forest pack as first level. It is a good practice to decide game category and core gameplay from the beginning, so we have low possibility to redo the whole level.
Right. Yeah, it's not great when you have to redo a whole level. So do you have plans to make more games after this? Anything you want to share?
I hope to get more experience in mobile game optimization and dedicated server before making next game. Looking forward to more convenient tools provided by game engines and more of your courses in the future.
Now, would you consider making more tutorials yourself? I'm pretty sure there are some skills you have that people would like to see, like how you configured your project for mobile and things like that. So, any possibility of that in the works?
Sure. Actually, I already published a tutorial about making an action game on mobile from scratch last year. However, it is in Chinese and a bit out of date since many things changed in UE5. I will consider to redo it in English this year.
I think a lot of people would like that. So, yeah, definitely let me know if you do that. I'll be very interested in taking a look and sharing it with the community. So, what optimizations did you make specifically for your project to make it mobile? I know you talked about this a little earlier, but anything that people should know?
Generally speaking, for art assets, I mainly need to resize or use the texture size, choosing proper channel for transparent image. If not, image will be weird on mobile test. Reduce model bones to less than 75 and merge materials if there are too many of them. In terms of programming part, I need to make sure use less tick events as I could. If not, mobile temperature might increase dramatically than usual.
Some great advice. Now, do you feel like mobile games are more challenging? And what are some of the challenges? Again, we talked about this a bit, but you want to elaborate on anything else there?
Yes, unlike using C# and adding more components in Unity, in Unreal Engine, we do need to keep in mind that disabling unnecessary plugins or functions first. Also, the core of gameplay code should be written in C++ instead of Blueprint for performance optimization. If not, low-end mobile might not be able to play the game. But Carol or inexperienced C++ codes do much more harm than Blueprint or C# codes. So developers must know clearly what they are writing for each line of the code. I committed several mistakes before, so I share this painstaking lesson for beginners. Dynamic lighting is better not to use due to poor shadow quality if it is a 3D game. Texture size and physical simulations should be careful. In a word, there are many limitations on mobile platform comparing to PC platform. The real challenge is to make your app compatible with as many mobile tabs as we can, at the same time with best game quality.
Right. Now, you're in my Unreal Engine 5 C++ multiplayer shooter course, and I have lots of optional challenges in this course, sort of things that you can tackle if you wish to take it upon yourself, right? And I've noticed that you're doing basically all of them. You're like, oh, optional challenge, boom. And you're posting these videos in the multiplayer shooter channel in Discord, and they look great. And you clearly have this ability to think of solutions to problems, right? So I want to know, how do you start thinking about how to solve problems? Like, tell me a little bit about your thought process when you want to tackle one of these challenges.
When I start to implement a new feature, or to say optional challenge, I'd like to make it work first anyway, by straightforward implementation. Usually bugs come out or compiler starts to complain something, reminding me of problems I didn't notice before. Then I start to debug step by step until I actually know which step is out of my expectation. Once we know where the root cause is, we have a bunch of ways to solve it. It is impossible to remember every line of the code base, but it is possible to debug the problem in few steps if I really know those codes.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Now, what are some game mechanics that you would like in Wingless Angels in the future?
Good question. Many mechanics can be implemented, including equipable badge items, following paths, dialogue system, or even new characters. However, before I cram too much mechanism into the game, I do need to listen to feedback and dig current gameplay mechanics, since this game targets to be an interesting game, not just a prototype containing mechanics that not contributing to core gameplay.
Are there some things you can't do in a mobile game?
All mobile games need to observe basic rule of store, no malicious codes, and investigate privacy of users illegally.
Right, so no spying on people, basically, right? So, do you ever get stuck when trying to figure out like how to implement a particular game feature? And what do you do when you get stuck? This is something that everyone who makes games has to deal with, right? So, what are some resources that you turn to in order to get more info about the problem?
When I get stuck by specific technical problems or particular game feature, I will go for Google, YouTube, or even Unity forums to seek solutions. There is always relevant information on the internet. Even there are no right solutions for my case, I might figure out where I can start. Sometimes I transfer knowledge from Unity to Unreal Engine. It may sound weird, but it is feasible. For example, in Unity, there are a bunch of tutorials for implementing ads and in-game purchase function. I know how to do it, so in Unreal Engine, that's why I also choose Unity API in WA. There are tutorials about mobile optimization for Unity mobile game. I refer to some tips and profiling methods to monitor WA performance.
Very nice. So, what are some skills you think all game developers should have?
I'd like to say there are many specific skills, including learning, asking questions, multiple languages, independent thinking, etc. But as a game developer, I think any skill helpful to achieve the goal in time is most important. Regardless specific game engines or programming languages. Every game engine or programming scripting language has its own unique advantage, or they will be forgotten quickly. Developers need to choose proper tools to finish tasks and try to improve workflow bit by bit.
Right? Now, you have a YouTube channel as well, don't you? And I noticed that you have some tutorials on there. Are you planning on releasing more tutorials on your other platforms?
It depends. Generally, when there is no relevant tutorial on the topics someone asks, I will consider to release short tutorial. I don't see I need to release duplicated contents if other one's tutorial works well.
Awesome. And more Udemy courses, is that in the works as well? I mean, we did mention courses a little bit earlier on, but, any other plans?
Yeah, as I said before, I will redo my mobile game tutorial in English this year.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Definitely. That'll be nice. So I really appreciate you taking the time to answer some questions. While you have me here, anything you want to ask me?
Yes, I have a few questions for you. Feel free to talk about. As a professional instructor, do you finish all courses on your own? Or having a small team at the studio?
So I sort of have a small team. I have one person I'm working with regularly who edits my videos. And then I contract some people for certain things. But for the most part, I'm kind of doing all of the creation, right? So I'll plan out a course. I'll prototype the course project usually by basically creating the game project, right? And make some pretty detailed notes and then go through and film it myself. And sometimes I'll master the videos, sometimes my video editor will master them. These days, mostly my video editor, but sometimes I'll outsource things like art assets if I can, but I tend to try to find things that are already available online for free. So, but yeah, it's mostly me, but I have help.
I took your courses and applied them to WA. From C++, the Ultimate Game Developer course, Ultimate Shooter course, etc. Those courses are not only covering codes, but also visual effects like Material and Niagara. How do you learn them?
Well, I have multiple ways to learn. Usually, when I want to learn something new, I'll first go to the documentation and see just how much info is there, right? And from there, I'll branch outward and try to find any sort of articles, tutorials, videos, books that may talk about what I'm trying to do. Sometimes it's very Unreal Engine specific, so documentation is sort of the first place to turn. Sometimes it's more computer science theory centric, like in the multiplayer shooter, we're doing server-side rewind. And that's one of those things that really there isn't anywhere to turn because you know that it exists, you know that companies use it. And I have lots of books and sources that talk about lag compensation and they sort of describe conceptually how it works. But I found zero resources on like examples of how to do it, right? So what I ended up doing was creating my own algorithm and sort of apply more computer science theories to the thing that we're trying to accomplish, right? So I need to store a history of locations of players, right? And so, I go to computer science. I'm like, okay, I learned these data structures. This one's good for these things. This other one is better for these other things. And sort of narrow down the technique that would be best applied to the thing I'm trying to do. So sometimes it has to require some ingenuity, right? You have to figure out what it is you are trying to solve and what tools you have at your disposal to solve them. And sometimes you'll discover that a particular problem requires things that you haven't learned yet. And then the job becomes learn that thing, right? So you'll have to take a day or 2 days or a week or a month. It depends on the problem, but you need to take the time to learn a particular skill so that you'll be better equipped to come up with a solution on your own. Now, another thing I like to do is look at other tutorials and see how they do it, and then I assess whether or not I think that was a good solution. And sometimes I'll conclude that it's good, and sometimes I'll say this was done really poorly and I think I can do it better. So, there's sources out there for certain things, and for some topics, the sources are a little, let's say, scarce. And in those cases, you kind of just have to get creative and see if you can figure out a way to do things. And while I'm figuring out how to do things for tutorials, there's like extra pressure because I can't just figure out a hack to do something. I have to show you an actual valid solution of how to do it. So there's kind of the difference between teaching tutorials, at least in my point of view, and making your own games, where in your own games you can put hacks in there because your players aren't going to see your code. They're just going to see that whatever it is you did is working, right? And for tutorials, I'm teaching them how to do that. And I can't teach them a bad way to do it. I mean, some tutorials, actually a lot of tutorials do teach you bad ways to do it. But me personally, I'm not willing to teach you bad ways to do it. So I will take a week or a month or sometimes longer to make sure that I understand all the skills I need to implement something before I go ahead and start planning on teaching that thing. So I guess the bottom line is just to make sure that you really understand what you're doing before you decide you'd like to teach someone else how to do it. Because tutorials that are like, now I don't know how this works or why it works, but it works, so I'm going to show you. I'm like, no, that's horrible because I don't want to learn how to do something. I want to understand what I'm doing when I do that thing. So that's kind of my philosophy.
You record coding process line by line, while some other instructors just copy-paste existing codes during recording video for saving time. Will you consider to do the same for intermediate or advanced course to decrease course preparation time in the future?
Probably not. And that's just because, for one, I kind of feel like it might be annoying to students if I'm just pasting in lines of code rather than kind of coding it along with them. I don't know. It's just kind of my style. I feel like I can type pretty quickly, even though I do make mistakes while I'm typing quickly. But usually the speed of the typing isn't really something that slows me down. I feel like I can pretty much type as fast as I'm talking. So I don't mind the typing. And I sort of feel like I'd get a weird feeling if I were just, pasting in code and then explaining that code. I don't know. It feels weird to me. I feel like, it's not necessarily being lazy, right? Because I've watched tutorials where they do that and I don't mind it personally. I look at the code. The videos are usually a little bit shorter. They're explaining it and spending less time talking, but I don't know. I kind of prefer the code along with me sort of methodology, but you're right though. Some more advanced topics, by then, the student kind of understands how to type out a line of code. So I don't know. It's possible, but I kind of feel weird doing that.
During course preparation, which step do you think consumes the longest time?
The longest time, well, if I have a pretty good working prototype and I know exactly what I'm doing before I do it, then recording videos doesn't take long. But if it's something that I haven't really prepared for and I kind of just dive in and I run into issues while I'm recording, then recording can become very time consuming very, very quickly. So these days I try to more do prototypes first and then work on the videos, but sometimes I improvise and sometimes I get ideas and I'm like, well, maybe I should do this too, and throw in a whole completely new feature. And that can not only require more research, but also more experimentation. There is a period of time where I'm not recording while I'm making the prototype, where it's basically R&D. I'm just researching and developing. And even though that does take time, I don't feel like it takes that much time, maybe because it's the most fun part of the job. But definitely the recording process itself is pretty time consuming. And then once everything's done and recorded, then I have to go back and edit those videos, and that takes a long time. And that's pretty much why I got someone to do it for me. So I have a video editor now, and it takes her a long time to do a single video. Like if the video is an hour long before editing, it can easily take 2 or 3 hours just to edit it, right? Especially if I'm saying a lot, because now you'll notice that there aren't any ums in my new videos, right? They're all cut out unless it's just one big long take and I'm not editing it at all. So if like right there I just said if you edit out the ums, it takes a long time. But I'm getting better at not saying so much anymore. So that's sort of just that one little thing is cutting out editing time, just saying less. So weird. It's such a strange habit to have, but I had it. I kind of getting rid of that habit, but you'll still hear me say like during this interview. But the editing is a huge part of it, and it's perhaps the least fun part of this whole thing, which is why it's so great to have a video editor and totally worth it.
If you get stuck, how do you solve it?
Well, that's a great question. When I get stuck, I like to do research. I like to look at videos, but not to sound like I'm trying to show off or anything like that. It's just the fact that I'm at the point where if I get stuck on something, you could pretty much assume that there's not going to be any helpful resources out there. Like the server-side rewind thing, right? Like if I'm stuck on something, it's usually something that no one has ever done before. So that's why there's no resources. Let me give you an example. The shooter course, right? The ultimate shooter course. I had this idea where when you pick up your ammo or your gun, it flies up to your face like in Fortnite, because Fortnite does it. I'm like, Fortnite did it, I can do it, right? There aren't any tutorials that will show you how to do that, not even close. And I basically had to come up with a solution. I was like, all right, well, I can maybe create some curves and use a curve for the Z location and interpolate in the XY. I kind of had to just, turn on my creative muscles and try to come up with something, right? And experiment, see if I could get it to work. And then, I'll look at other tutorials, like if there's a part of it that might be sort of explained somewhere, I'll take a look at that and see if any of that could be applied to my problem. But yeah, when I'm stuck, it's usually just figure it out. I often pull out a notebook or a whiteboard and sort of diagram the problem. And I'm like, okay, I need to do this. I need this to do that. And just kind of draw out little boxes and arrows and label them and write some pseudocode and give it a try. Jump into Unreal Engine and code it up and see if it works. If it doesn't, then back to the drawing board. So these days for me, when I get stuck, it's usually figure it out on my own. But I'll tell you this, when you get to that point where you're stuck and the way out is to do it yourself, I think that's where you grow your skills the fastest, because once you get into that habit of doing things yourself, I mean, there's the preliminary first scan the internet to see if there are solutions. And then when there aren't, then you just go to work doing it yourself. Once you get to that point, then the space of problems that you can't solve shrinks and gets smaller and smaller. So it's kind of empowering when you get to where you can just think of a problem and implement it on your own. And when I do implement something on my own, it is good to see if other people have done that same thing. So it's a mixture, but yeah, these days it's usually just kind of figure it out and come up with something and see if it works.
Is there any solution to decrease time of tutorial preparation cycle?
That is a great question. I've thought about it, and when you set things up and you have a routine, you can actually save a lot of time. And sometimes it's better to have a space set up and dedicated just for tutorials, right? Like I have a studio and it's this big soundproof box that has my workstation in it, and I do all my work here. I don't have to rearrange my desk. I don't use it for anything else, right? So everything for tutorials is here. So I wake up, I go straight to my box and sit down and start working. And if you have things set up like that and you have no time, nothing that you need to do to start actually making tutorials, then it's a lot better. Another thing is get a video editor. My video editor is great. I record the video, send it over to her, and she's editing. And when I finish a video, I can start immediately on the next one, which is a huge thing, because if you finish a video and then you edit it for 3 hours, you've kind of interrupted your flow. And if you don't have to stop, then everything is fresh in your mind. You haven't forgotten that thing you reminded the students you're going to mention in the next video, right? And you can do that on your own if you save up all your videos till later or master them all at the end. But it's better to kind of mix between the two, right? Get 10 videos done and master them. Get the next 10 done and master them. I just get one done and send it over, and my editor starts editing it and I start on the next one. But sometimes those videos start to pile up and there'll be 100 videos still needing to be mastered, and I'm just powering through. So I might just go back and start helping with the editing. But that's a huge part of it, is the editing. Another thing is, the better you can speak, the less you have to edit out your videos, right? And this also ties into having your prototype done and your code already written, so that once you record the video, you know exactly what you're going to do and you're not stumbling, you're not falling into making mistakes as much. And if you know exactly what you're doing, I find this with myself at least all the time. If I'm doing something I haven't prepared to do, I speak more slowly. I pause to think, which that needs to be edited out, right? You don't want 10 seconds of silence. Or I misspeak and I say the wrong thing, and that needs to be edited out as well. And the more you do that, you'll have like an hour-long video that edits down to half an hour by the time you're done with it, and it takes 2 hours to edit, right? So if you can sit down and do an entire video and not mess up, not stumble, not say the entire time, and by the time you're done with it, it's done. You barely need to slap on an intro, little bit of music, and an outro fade out, and it's ready to upload. If you can do that, you're going to save a lot of time, because editing does not take that long. I mean, you do have to give it a once over, sit down and watch the entire video and you're done with it. But if that's all you have to do, that is a huge, huge time saver. So I guess efficiency overall, the more efficient you get when you're in the recording process, the less you have to edit those videos later, and you'll save a lot of time. So it gets more efficient the more times you do it, and you learn what to do better each time you make a series. And the more you stick with it, the more you'll see your tutorials improving each time you start a new one, because you're taking what you learned from those previous tutorials and applying that.
I see you are preparing a Patreon option in your YouTube channel. Do you have any plan for YouTube channel this year?
I do. I have lots of plans for YouTube this year. So you might have noticed I'm doing more YouTube videos more frequently, and I have been working on a Patreon. It's almost ready to launch. I'm still uploading a bunch of content onto it. And I've been trying to think about ways to get more content out to the students more frequently, so they don't have to wait so long, because the large Udemy projects can take a while. They can take months. And I don't like that. I like students to constantly get new stuff, learn new things from me. And I'm always learning new, amazing, exciting things, right? So I want to teach that. I want to get that out there. So yeah, I'm going to be doing a lot more YouTube, and I'll have this Patreon. And so that's going to be out soon. I have some other surprises in store as well. And this is going to be a way to not only get more content out there, but to sort of communicate with the community a little bit more, let you guys in on what it is I'm up to, what it is I'm working on, what's coming in the future, and kind of where I'm at. And also open the dialogue and get the community to talk back to me and tell me what it is they want. You know, I've opened up those tutorial request channels in Discord and things like that. And I want to know what people want to see, what do they want to learn, what it is that they want me to make, because, you know, that's what this whole thing is all about. It's for the students who like what I'm doing, and I want to keep doing what my students like. So I'm going to keep those communication lines open and put out some content a little more frequently on the YouTube side. Yeah, so there's a lot of really exciting stuff that I plan on doing for the rest of this year and next year.
Do you have plan to make a game and publish on Steam or App Store?
That was my initial plan for the multiplayer course game, and I would like to do that at some point. I have been super busy with tutorials, and as you know, making a game is a lot of work. Doing a game project for a tutorial series is great because, you know, you don't have to publish it. So that's a whole different set of skills and things to do. Actually getting the game published, promoting the game, getting people to play the game, play testing the game. And I actually did need to do a lot of that stuff just prototyping the multiplayer course, because you need to make sure that it works, right? So I had a private channel going for a while where I had students from Discord play testing with me and making sure things worked and finding bugs and things. So yeah, when you do an actual game, when you release it, it's a lot of work and it can be expensive. And you may need to do a dedicated server, which means you might need services and you might need to put some money into it. So yeah, initially I was going to do that with the multiplayer shooter game, and it's possible that I might end up doing that, but I would want to probably add some more features to it and add support for more things like friend systems, voice chat, and stuff like that. So, you know, it's a lot of work to do a game, and doing tutorials is also a lot of work. So if only I could have like 10 of me, I could probably make all the things I wanted to make. But it is possible that I'll make a game and release it in the future, but that might not be for a while because I have a bit of a list that I'm working down, and sometimes items get inserted into the top of the list, and I'm just super busy right now, but it's possible. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Well, for taking the time to talk to me. I really enjoyed our conversation. You have a great game, and I look forward to more content from you in the future. So thank you, Well.
Thank you very much.
So there we have it, guys. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. This is a beautiful mobile game made in Unreal Engine, and you know, you can make something like this as well. So if you like this video, go ahead and like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. That all really, really helps this YouTube channel. And take a look in the description for this video for some links to some of the stuff we talked about. And if you're interested, go check them out. Also, if you have a game that you would like me to play, reach out to me and tell me about it. And perhaps I'll talk about your game if you're one of my students and you've learned something from any of my courses. I'd like to see how you've applied it and maybe even ask you some questions about it. So thank you all so much. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you next time.